New video.
Could you please give us your name?
Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I came in with the song. Ooh, yeah, I came in with the song. Bitch, I play red wrong. Yeah, bitch, I play red wrong.
So why have edits of Epstein just like that one popped up everywhere on the internet? How could such a vile person, someone so disgusting that they can barely be counted as a member of humanity, be even remotely considered cool enough that he is granted some kind of presence on the internet based on his style? Of course, sometimes these edits are made with the purpose of comedy. I'm not going to try to argue in favor or against portraying Epstein in a particular light. That's not the point of this video. What I will be arguing though is the idea that this aesthetic, which was imposed upon Epstein supposedly post-mortem, if he's even mortem in the first place, was actually not imposed. So my idea is that Epstein was not just a billionaire, but also with excessive sexual desires, but also with interests in science. My idea is that Epstein actually lived a kind of coherent whole of a life. And so by the end of this video, you'll probably understand that Epstein was definitely not just living by the orders of someone else, nor was he just living some basic power fantasy of his own. In my view, he was embodying something wholly more abstract than any of these things, an aesthetic of evil, elite futurism. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? So the best framing / preface I can give you will be to bring you back to 1974, when Epstein is hired by Donald Barr at his first job to be a math teacher at the prestigious Dalton School in New York, despite having no college degree and only being 21, only to then be fired soon after for alleged poor performance. But this Donald Barr guy who hired Epstein in the first place is of interest. He's the father of William Barr, who is the Attorney General of the United States when Epstein supposedly took his own life. But he was also an author, and it's in his novel titled Space Relations, a slightly gothic interplanetary tale, that we see a striking resemblance to what Epstein would later on devolve into. A world centered around sadistic, interplanetary, transhumanist elites who engage in disgusting sexual acts with their slaves. Man, I have no idea if I can say this shit on YouTube. Including a passage with an underage slave girl being at a clinic made to breed even more slaves. So firstly, not only is it interesting that this Donald Barr guy was given responsibility towards children, but he is essentially describing the kind of backdrop Epstein would end up fulfilling as his life went on. This backdrop, or aesthetic as I like to call it, is one I've coined as elite futurism. And so what are the elements behind the story of Donald Barr? Elitism, transhumanism, as described in the novel as a genetically enforced dominance hierarchy, and sexual exploitation, not as a taboo, but as a kind of codified system of dominance. And all of these things, if you've been paying attention, were the building blocks to Epstein's whole world, basically. The most defining part of the Epstein scandal, besides, you know, is the sheer privacy and intimacy cultivated by these elite networks. Hence why they fueled so many conspiracy theories and speculations, even before any kind of concrete proof was ever released to the public. But it can be said that Epstein was looking for power, but not through democratic legitimacy behind a podium, but rather at dinner tables. From royalty to billionaires to even academics, Epstein was out to establish a power network, one which he was not only at the center of, but also the gatekeeper for entry as well as exit. So the purpose of this elitism was twofold. First was Epstein's fascinations in gene modding, essentially fulfilling the block of transhumanism. So as you can see, there's emails of him discussing a philanthropic idea of raising humanity's IQ through genetics, to even cartoonish levels of evil, like this one email where he wanted his genome to survive by ensuring all of humanity kept traces of his DNA, like some kind of Jewish Genghis Khan. For this goal, he attempted to associate himself with Harvard and MIT scientists who themselves were experts in this field. Then there's the business side of things, like the Trilateral Commission, a club Epstein was famously part of, which he describes as follows in this interview with Steve Bannon.
So he thought that there was a world that existed that would be a combination of both politics and business and leadership. What do I mean? He formed something called the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission is some spooky stuff. People said it was some of the people that, the Illuminati, there's some mystery about it, people that ran the world. It was politicians, but David said, most countries, the politicians get elected for 4 years or 8 years, separate from the royal families in England or in the Middle East. Someone's there for 4 years and then they're not there anymore. The most important people to have stability and consistency would be businessmen. So he formed this Trilateral Commission of businessmen and politicians from 3 major continents. So it was the North Americans, the Europeans, and the Asians.
So now imagine this, private dinners in New York, billionaires, scientists are involved, essentially discussing converging tech and capital, all with an underlying ideology that their intelligence somehow makes them legitimate for ruling humanity, or at least makes them more fit to rule than any publicly elected official. They discuss modifying the genetic makeup of the world population, but it's certainly not with your input. Then would come the darkest element of it all, which was the coagulant that kept the entire operation together, the sexual deviance. Now, of course, half of the point of the cheese pizza, obviously I can't say this on YouTube, was blackmail to keep the whole operation under wraps and make sure nobody would ever out Epstein unless they wanted themselves to be outed and their whole reputation, career, family completely destroyed, since they would be part of it as well. The second part, however, is that these people actually enjoyed doing this. They knew what was happening and still partook in it and went far past the line needed for you to just be blackmailed and be controlled. They were literally sending each other emails about some "Did you enjoy the torture video?" This fact is revealed in Epstein's own literary choices as revealed by Bloomberg. Now watch this. It's absolute like gooner literature. So a banned book by the Supreme Court in 1946 called Memoirs of Hecate County, about an intellectual who manipulates this naive married woman into a sexual relationship and then emotionally destroys her. Many books on tantric spiritual sex and erotic spirituality manuals, multiple annotated copies of Lolita, not one, multiple. The Man from ORGY, you can't make this up, like come on. The Man from ORGY series, which is about a sexologist spy, who travels the world investigating women, seducing them and solving crimes through sexual encounters. This guy is such a cooler. But yeah, I should have waited for VR before kicking the bucket at least. Then 2 novels from the Flashman Papers about a lecherous globetrotter who navigates slave trading networks, brothels, corrupt political circuits, and transatlantic criminal operations. The character bluffs, seduces, flees danger, and lies constantly, and somehow always ends up decorated and celebrated. Credits to the Alcibiades Twitter account, by the way, for revealing all of this information, which was behind Bloomberg's paywall. Maybe this stuff should be public information, I don't know. Point is, Epstein was living a certain lifestyle. Beyond the conspiracy realists who characterize him one-sidedly as, you know, a plant from a certain Middle Eastern nation, or the leftists who portray his disgusting excesses as merely a parallel product of his material excesses, it's quite clear that Epstein is kind of his own case, kind of a psychology of his own, but still very much a product of the environment he was brought up in. Again, Donald Barr was writing about this in 1974. Actually, I don't know if it was written in 1974. Don't quote me on that. Although, funnily enough, this definitely mirrors Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who himself worked for the Mossad, Robert Maxwell, as the Epstein files reveal an email that he was in fact killed by the Mossad after trying to blackmail them for £400 million, threatening them to release all the information that he had about Mossad's operations. Additionally, and this is from the email, I'm quoting Epstein who wrote this, Maxwell passed on all the secrets he learned to Mossad in Tel Aviv. In turn, they tolerated his excesses, vanities, and insatiable appetite for a luxurious lifestyle and women. So this is a topic I've been meaning to talk about publicly, and with a lot of the files vindicating what I've been saying privately for years, now's the time for me to ride the wave. More conspiracy videos will come, so stay tuned. Bye-bye. More conspiracy videos will come, so stay tuned. Bye. Dude, I did a fucking Roman salute.